The latest on the novel coronavirus. The U.S. government is now preparing to evacuate nearly 400 Americans stranded on a cruise ship in Japan.
Many look forward to a cruise vacation, but these folks have been stuck on this ship for a week and a half. And when they get back to the U.S., they will go back into quarantine.
All this as we're learning of the first death from the virus outside of Asia. A Chinese man dying in Paris.
This morning, plans now underway to evacuate nearly 400 Americans stranded aboard the quarantined Diamond Princess. The cruise ship docked in Japan for more than 11 days. At least 285 people on board have tested positive for the COVID-19 virus, including another 67 new cases announced just today. The U.S. Embassy says the emergency evacuation will begin tomorrow. All Americans who show no symptoms and want to leave will be flown back to the U.S., where they'll undergo another 2 weeks of quarantine.
Big breaking news has come in. The union government has decided to send a consignment of medical supplies to China to combat coronavirus. Indian Ambassador Vikram Misri has informed, and that, remember, because the death toll from coronavirus in China has now reached 1,665, with China clearly stating that it does need medical masks, gloves, suits, especially for the medical staff attending the virus-affected patients.
At least 15 children died in Haiti when a fire swept through an orphanage on the outskirts of the country's capital. Authorities say this orphanage was operated by a U.S. religious group based in Pennsylvania. This fire began Thursday night. A childcare worker at the home says it took about 90 minutes for firefighters to arrive. Officials are still trying to figure out how this all began. But according to reports citing staff and children, the orphanage had been using candles because the building's generator was broken. Authorities are now working to support and rehouse those surviving children.
Day 2 of the Munich conference. One of the main speakers, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He began by contradicting a thesis put forward the day before by German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier.
Collectively winning. That the United States rejects the international community. End of quote. I'm here this morning to tell you the facts. I'm happy to report that the death of the transatlantic alliance is grossly over-exaggerated.
That may be, but the morning's other main speaker was not so sure. French President Emmanuel Macron said Europe must become more independent of the US. Macron and Pompeo also disagreed over one of the main themes of this year's conference, that the West is losing global influence.
A handshake at a difficult time. The Russian and Turkish foreign ministers have met on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference as strains between the two countries grow over the war in Syria.
We have very good relations with Turkey, but that doesn't mean we have to agree on everything.
Russia backs the Syrian government while Turkey backs the opposition, and a year and a half ago the two agreed to set up a de-escalation zone in the northwest of the country. A Syrian government offensive has, however, threatened this truce. More than a dozen Turkish soldiers have been killed in the past 2 weeks, and government forces have seized Turkish observation posts.
Hundreds of women continued to demonstrate on the streets of Mexico City. Their anger ignited by the case of 25-year-old Ingrid Escamilla, brutally murdered by her boyfriend on February 9th. The National Palace was one of the targets of the crowds. They said the government hasn't done enough to address the issue of violence against women. It's estimated that 10 women are killed in Mexico every day. There's also been a backlash against Mexican media after photos of Ingrid's mutilated body were published.
Two people have died in rough seas off the coast of southeast England as Storm Dennis batters the UK and Ireland. A status orange wind warning has been issued for Waterford and Wexford. The southwest winds are expected to reach up to 120 kilometers an hour. The worst of the gales will hit exposed coasts and hills. The forecast wet and windy weather has also caught some tourists by surprise in Dublin. There is widespread travel disruptions just as the midterm school holidays have begun. There is also a big risk of flooding, with the Met Office issuing 57 warnings for places throughout the UK. Hundreds of flights have been cancelled in and out of the country. On Saturday, British Army personnel were dispatched to parts of West Yorkshire to build barriers and repair damaged flood defences.
Now, protesters also set up rail blockades today just north of Toronto. The 200 or so Wet'suwet'en supporters halted train traffic to Hamilton, London, New York, and Michigan.
Side by side, they came in droves, taking to the rail tracks, all in the name of Wet'suwet'en solidarity and the fight to put a stop to a pipeline. This group started with one blockade right here on this major rail line in Vaughan. We were told that at one point there were about 200 people on the other side there holding up signs and setting up fire pits on the tracks. Some of those people then moved down about a kilometer east to set up a second blockade. Organizers say they've halted train traffic heading as far west as Michigan and northwest towards BC and even Wisconsin.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has made a public appearance for the first time in 3 weeks, marking the birthday of the late Kim Jong-il, his father and former leader of the reclusive state. February 16th is celebrated in the north as a national holiday as the Day of the Shining Star. The state-run KCNA said Sunday that Kim visited Kumsusan Palace of the Sun in Pyongyang, where his father's body lies. This marks his fourth appearance in the public eye this year, marking a quiet start to the year for the young leader. Observers have noted, though, that his lack of public engagements may be due to the timing of the novel coronavirus outbreak.
Thousands of anti-fascist demonstrators marched through the city of Erfurt on Saturday, not just against the far right, but also against the governing CDU party for siding with the far right's Alternative for Germany party in a recent state election. They're outraged that the CDU teamed up with the AfD party to vote the left-wing leader of the state of Thuringia out of office. One Liberal Party candidate threw flowers at the feet of the CDU's newly elected candidate Thomas Kimmerick in disgust instead of congratulating him. The result has caused a political storm in Germany and broken an historical precedent. Not since the Nazis ruled has a government found common cause with the far right.